Hey, everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. Didn't really get too much out of NXT. They actually taped it a week ahead of time, seemingly kind of setting the stage for some of what they're going to do in Atlanta for the Great American Bash, and then obviously leading into Evolution. So the big thing, the closing angle, was Jordynne Grace setting the stage for her match with JC Jane for the NXT Women's Championship at Evolution. She gets attacked by Fatal Influence, and out to the rescue is the former Mariah May, Blake Monroe, who took a week off of television last week to sell the attack during her contract signing, where I theorized that maybe Blake Monroe would get a women's championship match the day before Evolution and ultimately slide in to face Jordynne Grace. Instead, that's not what's going to happen. But they are going to have JC Jane and Jordynne Grace have two matches over the course of 2 days in Atlanta at the Great American Bash. It is JC Jane and Fallon Henley of the Fatal Influence, because I guess Jasmine Nix doesn't wrestle, taking on Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe in a tag team match. It'll be very interesting to see how this gets sorted out, because clearly what they're doing is they're creating a little bit of a misdirect here in regards to how the women's championship picture is going to be painted. It's very clear they're trying, like, because I thought that they kind of telegraphed it and maybe were saying Jordynne Grace isn't going to win. This now kind of puts it like a little bit in, in doubt of what's going to happen. And now I kind of lean a little bit more towards Jordynne Grace potentially winning that match. Although that being said, then what does that mean? The more you think about it, it's like Jordynne Grace should have the advantage, but she also obviously has the numbers game down against her because it's still 2-on-3. So there could be a lot that they could do here. It's a weird situation that they've got going on. But what I'm wondering about is, what does the future hold for Blake Monroe? Because clearly where the way they're positioning her right now is they're positioning her as a babyface, which to me is only going to last so long. We've seen Mariah May, or what she is now, Blake Monroe. The glamour character worked a lot better when she was a heel. So I think because she's new, because she's the big signing, it's going to make a lot of sense. This is why I think the door opens a little bit for a possibility of, say, Jordynne Grace wins at Great American Bash, and then they set up a feud with Blake Monroe for later on in the year. That being said, I don't think it's going before the end of the year. Blake Monroe is going to be holding that championship. There's not a doubt in my mind that she's going to be holding that championship, and like she's just a star, and they gave her a good entrance theme. They screwed up Jordan's entrance theme, but yeah, this weekend coming up in a couple weeks at Evolution, it could also lead to a lot of bullshit here to maybe protect Jordynne Grace as well in the event that JC Jane is ultimately able to win, because she's basically barely held the championship. She's held it for like a month and a half. So a lot more is on the table. They did a good job of kind of creating a little bit more intrigue going into this match. It'll be interesting to see if there is a third party involved in this, to potentially involved with Jordynne and Blake to go against the Fatal Influence, so that Jasmine Nix doesn't feel like she's being completely left out of the picture. But yeah, the women's division as a whole is actually really interesting in NXT, because you're gonna have Izzy Dame, who is she's with Braun Breaker, so that's so Izzy Dame, she gets an opportunity at Sol Ruka at the Women's North American Championship. It'll be interesting to see, because one of the big pieces that came out of Raw is who's going to be the NXT team that ultimately challenges at Evolution. Because the one thing that I'm having a really hard time believing is that they might actually go into Atlanta and not have Blake Monroe on that show. It's interesting that they're going to have her go across and be basically booked as kind of counter programmed against All In with her former company when she was Mariah May. But I thought that there was a path potentially, but they want her to get some reps in. Her wrestling style is a little bit more Joshi, so a little bit more physical in nature. So they probably wanted to give her a little bit more time. Jordynne, like, this is really like I really don't know how to call this women's division now, because now that Cora Jade's left, but then obviously you had Roxanne Perez, Stephanie Vicaire, and Julia all went up to the main roster. And now this women's division has pretty much had a complete reset, like a real complete reset, because um, there's still a ton of talent in that division. And then you've got it also supplemented below in Evolve. So there's just a lot of talented women across the WWE system. And so giving that reset really is interesting. And I really think that Blake Monroe is going to be the cornerstone of this division. It's yet to be seen if they're going to position her as a babyface. Because to me, I just don't know how much shelf life there's going to be for Blake Monroe as a babyface. Because, like I said, a lot of her gimmick leans heel. So that's what I was really interested seeing this whole thing play out in the main event, and seemingly, now we've got this alliance and this friendship developing between Blake Monroe and Jordynne Grace. Is Jordynne going to stick around to see it out, or is Jordynne just another thing to get JC Jane ultimately to face Blake Monroe? They did a really good job, because like I said, the one question that I had when Jordynne won this tournament was, okay, how are they going to incorporate Blake Monroe into this whole thing? Because her standing, like not being in the tournament, missing out on potentially missing out on Evolution, it's odd. But again, she's only been there for like a month, so I kind of get it. But it certainly adds some star power to that women's division that lost a ton of it going to the main roster. But she will be the NXT Women's Champion in short order, and I would expect another fast track to the main roster for because Jordynne Grace and Blake Monroe are going to be on the main roster in 2026 at the latest. Like some point by the middle of next year, around this time next year, those two are going to be on the main roster. So how they sort this out in NXT, how they sort this out moving forward, is going to be really, really interesting. As they go into the Great American Bash, it's going to be really interesting how that show stacks up, because really, you've got Inamura, really cool actually. He'll challenge Obafemi. I think they're kind of like window dressing until they can get to Javon Evans to ultimately get that title off of Obafemi at some point, because Obafemi's just that dude. So that's another interesting thing. Like, the NXT show it's an interesting bit of calendar programming, but I'm not exactly sure on. Well, I know AEW fans are obviously going to watch. If you're posed against it and you're a big wrestling fan, we'll see if there's a draw really going into outside of say curiosity seeing Mariah May, Blake Monroe's first NXT match happening, at least on television, because she's competed at live events. So that could be something to watch. And the other thing to also watch on this before I get out of here is, does JC Jane take a pin in this match? Or does she, or if she doesn't, or does Blake Monroe get the pin? Do they add her to the match at Evolution and make it a triple threat? That's another thing on the table that they could potentially go with. One thing I'm not too keen about is Jordynne Grace taking another pin. So they definitely have options, and they've definitely made it a lot more intriguing. It was not as cut and dry last week. It was very vague, and I was a little bit concerned about the route that they were taking here. But this was an interesting development going into we're only gonna have one more NXT really to sell this, and then before you know it, we're gonna be in Atlanta. So it's just, it's on the 12th, man. So we're literally like a week and a half away from this thing. That's just, time goes by so quickly with these, I guess I'll call them micro builds, because really, like, you go from one event, 2 weeks later, there's a next event. 2 weeks later, there's a next event. Maybe it's 3. It's crazy. 'Cause seriously, like, you're going to get through Saturday night's main event, NXT and Evolution, and then before you know it, in like 3 weeks, it's going to be SummerSlam. So just a wild time in WWE. It's going to be a loaded weekend. Just 11 days away from this recording on July the 12th and then July the 13th with, AEW All In and, Evolution. And then obviously, NXT's Great American Bash. Just a lot of Saturday night's main event, just a bunch of shit going on that Saturday and Sunday. One of the big weekends of wrestling overall in the entire calendar year. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you. Bye bye.